Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel, Untitled Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to paint this gorgeous sunset sunflower landscape scene. It's a much more advanced tutorial as everyone's been really good and you've all been working your way through the tutorial, so I thought why not teach you step by step a more advanced, harder tutorial. So that being said, let's get into it. So as it's a more advanced tutorial today, we're going to use more colours. So you're going to need some white, some yellow, some orange, a little bit of pink, some green, some purple, some blue, tiny bit of brown and some black. Now I have a medium-sized canvas that I've painted burnt sienna and I've proportioned the horizon line 2/3 of the way up, and we're going to have 1/3 as the sunflower field below. So we're going to have this horizon line here, and then we're going to have some trees and some shrubbery. We're going to have this gorgeous sunset and clouds with our sun just here to the right hand side. We're going to create a light effect, so we're going to create some light and get cooler as it gets towards the left hand corner, and the same with the left hand corner. We're going to get much brighter around the sun and create heat, and as we get closer towards the viewer we're going to create larger sunflowers. So just like that tape measure, as we get closer towards the viewer we're going to bring the sunflowers towards us. So to get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to block everything in. So I'm just going to use some jet white and I'm just going to get some yellow, add it to the white to create this Naples yellow, which is just yellow and white, and then I'm just going to add yellow, pure yellow, just around it. So just like always, we're just going to try to block in our painting just so we know where everything is, and we're just going to try to create an underpainting that we can paint over the top. As I say many times, now it's a more advanced tutorial as people are really desperate to learn all these techniques. So we're going to add some orange and yellow to that mix. Yeah, so as this is a more advanced tutorial, we'll go through the stages, but just at the beginning, don't worry, we're going to just block everything in. So don't worry if your work is streaky or it's a bit scruffy, because we're going to go over it and we're going to neaten it up. I'm going to teach you how to blend today. I'm going to teach you how to use some techniques just to make your skies and your work look much more realistic. But just to start, as I say, we just want to get everything on the canvas where we want it, so we want to get everything in proportion. So all I'm doing is I'm just adding more orange as I get further away from my sun. So if you imagine the sun as that white dot in the middle and everything around it is going to be sort of yellowy orange, and as the sky gets cooler away from that heat source. So to make it look cooler, all I'm doing is darkening up the tone, but I'm still using a very hot tone in orange just to make it look like the sunlight is fading off into the distance. So I'm going to take some yellow and I'm going to take some orange and a tiny bit of pink, and I'm just going to add a dot of black, literally a dot, okay? So look, if it's too much black, it'll take all the colour. So if you do that, like me, just add the following colours back in. So just add some yellow and orange, and if you want the dot of pink, just to put it back, just so it's more proportionate, as black kills colour. So if you do put too much black, like I just did, just put the colours back in. But all black does is it makes the tones look more realistic. So by adding a dot of black, what it does, it just neutralizes the tones and it just takes a little bit of the color out and just makes them look more realistic. It's a really weird trick. Now I'm incredibly lazy. I'm always painting, so I buy a lot of my paints pre-mixed, but the purple I have in the top corner here is just purple, lots and lots of white and a dot of black. So purple, lots and lots of white and a dot of black, and all we're going to do is add a little bit black and orange to that mix, just so we've got a bridge tone. Now a bridge tone is basically the sky gets cooler as the light source fades out into the distance. So if you think the sky is blue normally, but obviously it's a sunset, and the sunset, the sun is going down and it creates this lovely sort of orange sheen. Well, to jump from orange to blue is a really big jump. So what we want to do is create tones, realistic tones that merge the two together. So if you can see, I'm using a big brush, and all I'm doing by using a little bit of that purple and white, I'm blending the hot tone of the orange with a cool tone of the purple and white. So I'm not going from a real big jump from really bright orange to purple and white. So I'm gradually adding more purple and white to my mix as I go further up towards the top of our painting. So if you just think of a really easy rule of thumb is, around the sun's going to be really hot, and as you fade off you're going to add cooler tones, and cooler tones are things like purples and blues. So all I'm doing, the great thing about using a big brush, not only is it easier because they covered so much space, but also you can get so much paint on your brush. So look, blue and white, which is just cobalt blue, lots and lots of white, and a dab of black, just a dab again. So look, all we're doing, and because my brush has already got some of the previous tones on it, it's just mixing them together. And all I'm doing is I'm just creating X shapes with my big brush. So think of Bob Ross. That's all he does, is he just creates these X shapes, and it just blends it. And as I say, as we get towards the top corner, we're just getting more bluer, we're getting more cooler, and it should, as we just do the edges, give the illusion of a nice gradient in our sky that looks realistic. Now, as I say, we'll go over all this. We just want to cover up all the burnt sienna. We just want to have everything where we want it so we can start building up the composition. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a tree line in. So I'm going to get some cobalt blue and purple and lots of white and a dab of black to make that top left hand colour. I'm just going to add some purple and orange to it. So if you just think purple, blue, orange and a dab of black. Okay, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a warm sort of grey bluey purple, and I'm just going to use a fan brush, and I'm just going to create a rough outline of a tree line. Now we'll again go over this. I want to teach you how to do light on trees. So, but what I'm just going to do is just try to sort of gauge the colours. So I think I'll darken it up, because sometimes, as I say, acrylics dry a lot darker. So all I'm just seeing is where I want things to be, how big I want things to be, because a lot of these compositions and things I do from my imagination. I find pictures of sunsets, or I take pictures of sunsets, but obviously I don't live near a sunflower series, unfortunately, here in London. So what I have to do is sort of create things that I think will look nice. Okay, so all I'm doing, I'm just rubbing out a big splodge here with my finger. But I thought I'd play the video at normal speed, so even though it's just over an hour long, this tutorial, this is how long it took me to paint this painting, okay? So you can follow along at home. Now I'm going to take some olive green. Now olive green is green, purple and yellow. Okay, so green, purple and yellow, and you can add, if you like to, a dot of orange. But it's just a really nice olive colour. So if you imagine olives that you buy in a jar that you eat, it's just green, yellow and a dot of purple, and you can add a little bit of orange if you want to, and you get this lovely bright olivey green. Okay, so as I say, if you, with me, I always have them pre-mixed, but all the colours you can make at home. You don't have to spend lots of money on expensive paints. You don't have to spend lots of money on expensive brushes. As I keep saying to you, you just need the tools, things like fan brushes, big brushes, flat brushes, and things like a blender brush. And you could buy a set for maybe like $5. So don't worry too much if you haven't got any of these supplies, okay? So all we're doing, if you think about it, just the same as the sky, we're trying to have a hot green, a warm tone, so that's why it's got a little bit of orange in it, around the sun, because obviously that grass is getting the sunlight. And as we walk towards the viewer, it's going to get colder. So we're going to get some black and blue and some sap green. Now sap green is quite a dark green, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit of orange just so it's not too cold, and a little bit of black just to darken it up. So green, blue and black, and a dot of orange just to warm it up. So if you imagine as you come towards the viewer, so if you were all the way at the bottom of this canvas and you were staring off into the distance, or you're going to be in the shade because you're far away from the sunlight. So the tone's got to reflect that, so you've got to have a cooler tone. So again, all we're going to do is we're just going to blend it into that olive green tone and just merge the two, just like we did with our sky. So again, by laying this underpainting and having the tones trick the viewer's eyes, so look, all we're doing is we're just blending, just like the sky, the cool tone into the warmer tone. What we're going to do, this underpainting is going to be the green grass, that when we put our lovely sunflowers on later on, the tones already and the transition in tones from the dark, cool and the blend in the tones will trick the viewer's eyes and do the work for you. So again, really easy trick. There we go. And it doesn't, as I say, have to be super neat. It's more in the tone that tricks the eye, not so much if it's super neat, because that can create texture. So now that it's dry, if you dry it with a hairdryer, you should have this nice composition that we can start putting all the detail and start layering everything on. And because you're putting a second layer of paint on, everything should look much brighter and much more better and more detailed, and we can blend everything. So we're just going to go over the top now. We know where everything is. So we've got some white for the sun, and then we've added white and yellow and a dot of black just to make a Naples yellow just around my sun, just so we've got a transition between what is the actual circle of the sun and just the lighter tone in the sky around it. So all I'm doing, I'm using a flat brush and I'm putting plenty of paint on my canvas just to cover up the texture, and I'm just adding more yellow now, so pure yellow, and I'm just blending it into that Naples yellow. Now you can again just add a dot of black, but be very careful, as I say, a dot, literally a dot, like a pencil end. Don't put too much black in because it will suck all the yellow out of the colour and you'll get this horrible musty colour. So literally, if you want to, you can put a dot of black into your yellow, but not too much because you don't want to make that tone too dark. Okay, so all we're doing, if you can see, all I'm doing, I've got a big flat brush and I'm just gently merging every tone with the previous tone. So even the Naples yellow, I'm just really softly blurring it into the darker yellow. So we're going to get some yellow and the Naples yellow, and all we're going to do, look, we're just going to blur the two together and we're just going to go around. So I'm just trying to create the heat source, and obviously we won't make this yellow blob that big. It will look like a giant UFO or something in the air. But we're just trying to create the illusion of the heat. And when we add the orange kind of takes over the yellow. So as you'll see in a minute, orange is very overbearing. So by adding orange and yellow together, we're going to create this lovely, really yellowy orange color. So more yellow, so 2/3 yellow and 1/3 orange, and then again a dot of purple and a dot of black just to neutralize it a bit. Now because we've got this yellowy orange tone and it's very realistic and it's nice and soft and pastel, as I say, when you blur it into the yellow, as you go in and just do it really softly, it will suck up the yellow. So that's why I've done quite a big patch of yellow. But as you can see, the orange is quite overbearing. So look, watch. It literally, as you blend it, it takes away a lot of that yellow. And I keep saying to you, your acrylic paints always dry a shade darker than when you lay them. So when you lay paints, they look really bright and they look really light in texture, but as they dry, they darken up and they also dry a bit flat. That's the problem with acrylics. So sometimes, especially with things like highlights, like using these bright tones, that's why we do the second layer. I know a lot of people, when you're watching some of the tutorials of fellow artists, they only do one layer and they do their paintings very, very quick. Well, if you want it sort of really, really a high quality, you want to do it twice, just like I am doing now, because as I say to you, one of the reasons I paint it burnt sienna is we want to cover up all that canvas, and we want it to dry, and we want it to blend, and we want to look as professional as we can. So look, all we're doing is we're adding more orange, dot of purple and a dot of black, because we're getting darker away from the light source. So look, we're just getting more oranger. It's not even a word, but oranger. So we're just getting darker as we get away from that sunlight. So as I say, can you see the difference between the original underpainting and this second layer? How much more vibrant and how much more professional it looks compared to the darker tone around it. It is worth just taking your time. I know it's a long time to sit and watch and listen to someone for an hour, but an hour in your life to literally paint something that looks pretty damn world class is not a long time. So look, we're just adding more orange, a little bit more purple, tiny bit of pink and a dot of black. So you can see how the black just sort of kills a bit of the colour, and it just makes it, again, just blending it in just as the horizon. Now skies, the horizon is always the lightest shade, and as I say, it gets darker as you go upwards. So again, a just good rule of thumb is to always do your horizon a really nice bright colour. So even if you're painting your sky blue, do the horizon lighter blue, and it will trick the eye and it will just make your skies look more realistic. So I'm going to zoom in for you. So remember that tone in the top right that I'm just using here is purple, tons and tons of white and a dot of black. And all I'm doing is just adding it into our orange that we just previously made. And look, I'm just gently, while the two tones are wet, I'm just gently blending the two tones together. Now, just like that orange stole a lot of the yellow, this tone is going to steal a lot of the orange. It's going to, so you've got to leave plenty of gaps. So look, just blending the two super gently. I'm applying hardly any pressure to my canvas. I'm just really gently blending it. Now you can, as I keep saying to you, buy blender brushes. They will do all the work for you. But look, all I'm doing is gently coming down, and I'm just blending the two tones together. And as I say, it's just taking a lot of that orange out of the sky. So that's why I left plenty of a gap just as we come down. So as I say, we're getting cooler as we're going up away from the light source. So we're going to add more purple and white. But I've still got a lot of that orange on my brush, and it's still wet. So I'm just, look, gradually blending the two tones together. Super easy. And it's a slow process. This is what I keep trying to say to all these people. I know everyone, especially nowadays with technology, has the attention span of a biscuit. They literally do not pay any attention to anything. They skip everything. Well, if you want to be the best and you want to learn, you got to do all these steps. You can't skip them. This is the thing. If you want the best artists in the world, they're the people who can, or a lot of people who are good at anything, who can focus like a laser for hours and hours and hours. If you ever watch someone like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or any sports person, when they're in the game mode, a bomb could go off and they wouldn't even know, because they are so in the zone and they are so laser focused. And that is the same with art. If you want to get good, you've got to put in the hours, you've got to take your time, and you want to treat every bit of the canvas and every bit of your composition the same. You don't want to take any shortcuts. But that's already starting to look great. So look, all we're doing, we're just getting cooler as we get away from our light source. So all I'm doing now is I'm adding pure purple and white, because obviously I've got still a teeny bit of a dirty brush and it's still got some of that orange on my brush. It's very easy to blend. If you notice with me, I've got some skanky brushes to the side. I don't really invest in expensive equipment or anything like that, and I hardly dip my paints in any water, if you've noticed. I just use them how I use them. I make sure I've got a little bit of water on my palette, so my palette is quite moist, and I literally only jab my paint when I really need to. So I'm literally hardly using any water. And the reason I wear my red or some skanky clothes is because when I want to clean my brush or anything, again, because I'm so laser focused, I haven't got time. I don't want to get out of my flow state. I don't want to get out of my zone. So I literally wipe it on my clothes. So that's why I always wear, it's good to wear scruffy clothes anyway, because paint, obviously you don't want to wear nice clothes. Now to make this blue is cobalt blue, lots and lots of white, and a dab of black. So all we're doing is we're getting cooler as we go up. So we've got the mixture between that purple and white that we just had previously, and now this blue and white to get this lovely pastel tone. And to get this darker blue, which is coming up in a minute, where this one, you just add a little bit of purple, a little bit more blue, a dot of black and white. So plenty of white, some cobalt blue, some purple, and a dot of black, and you should get this darker shade here, but it's still very pastel. Now the reason we're putting the darker tone right into the corners is because we want to frame the composition with a darker tone. By darkening up the corners, what it does is it focuses our viewers' eyes, and all we're going to do is swap back to the previous tone and just do X shapes while the tones are wet. And because we've put that darker tone right into the corner, by just using the previous tone and just blending it, watch, it just blends the two tones together, and it just gets this lovely seamless transition, and it just puts a nice darker tone to frame your composition. So if you ever have your work framed from a nice framer, it will just look much more nicer, and it will just frame the composition and just make it look prettier. So there we go. Our sky looks fantastic. Look at that. So we've got this wonderful painted transition. We've got this lovely light source, and we're going to add some clouds, and we're going to use a blender brush first, and we're just going to neaten up our sun. Where we've used such a light tone in the white and the yellow, it's still not too blended, so I'm going to add a tiny bit more yellow to the mix. So just a tiny bit more yellow, and I'm just going to go around. Now the great thing about a blender brush, they are so soft and they're very dry. An expert at blender brushes is Colour by Felix. If you ever see his videos, they are fantastic, and he uses blender brushes brilliantly. So if you just imagine you've got this really soft textured brush, and all we're doing is we're just blending the previous tones together, and because the brush is so soft and we've got barely any paint on it, if you think it's like a lady applying makeup to her face, it's really nice, and it just highlights everything. So all I'm doing is I'm just going over the tones, and where we've just got, as I said to you previously, where we've just got harsh transitions, I'm just trying to soften them up using my blender brush. So it takes a little while. As I say, some of these little techniques, they're not hard, they're just time consuming. So it's just being able to put in the hours and just softening up things, because the sun, we want to create the background so it looks like it's quite far off into the distance. So by softening it up, what that does, again, it just tricks the viewer's eyes, and it just makes it look like it's far away. So just by getting some orange and yellow, which is that more sky tone, and just getting some yellow for more near the sun, I'm just going between the two, just like we did with our sky, and now I'm just going to try to create some clouds. So if you imagine anything around your sun is going to sort of be super luminous and super bright. So the clouds, because we've got this lovely blender brush, we want to make them quite soft, but we want to match the sort of intensity and the colour of our sun. So by just using some yellow and orange, a tiny bit of white just to make it a lighter tone, I'm just using that really nice soft brush, and I'm just going around my sun, and I'm just trying to create the impressions of little floating clouds in and around our sun. Now again, these are really subtle, soft, textured things on our canvas, but again, it just adds layers of detail. It's just trying to mirror what's in reality, just trying to mirror what's in the sky above us. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just trying to just come up with ideas of little sort of floating clouds, sort of matching the intensity of the sun. And I'm just using a bit of yellow just to sort of come out away from that sun. Just sometimes you get sort of a crack in the sky almost, and I'm just trying to soften it up just so it looks like the sunlight sort of blaring out of our sun. So again, it's just to soften it, it's just to make it look nicer. So just by adding yellow and just a little bit of orange, I'm just softening up the sky, just trying to make the transition look like you can't even notice it. So I'm going to get some orange and yellow and a little bit of pink, tiny bit of pink, and a bit of purple, and we're going to create this lovely sort of just a dot of black again just to neutralize it. We'll create this lovely sort of tanny color, still very, very light in pastel tone, and I'm just going to swap to a smaller brush and I'm going to create a cloud. So again, look, if you think near the sun, it's going to be very, very light in tone because obviously it's very bright around the sun. So we don't want to do anything harsh, we don't want to do anything really dark because obviously it's getting lots of that sunlight. So by just having that pastel tone, we're just going to create the illusion of a big cloud, and we're just getting cooler by adding a tiny bit of purple as we move towards the left. So if you just think, we're just going to add a tiny bit of purple just as we move across to the left. Now, as I say, acrylics dry really dark, so whatever you lay, you want to make sure when it's dry it's not too harsh. So because it's a bit too harsh near the sun, I'm just adding some yellow and orange just near this area of the sun, and we can soften it up in a minute with the blender brush, but I'm just trying to match the transition in the sky. So all I'm doing, I'm just, while I've got that tone, I'm just trying to create a cloud. So I'm trying to have everything match. So our skies is going to match, our tree line is going to match, our grass is going to match. So now I know what I want in my sky. I'm going to try to mirror the sunlight on everything else. Now here's the subscribe button. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so, and please turn the bell notification so you get alerted when there's a new tutorial. So look, all I'm doing is I'm adding some purple to the mix just as I move towards the left hand side, and we're getting lighter in tone, some more orange and yellow as we get towards the sun. So look, so as I say, because I'm doing this kind of out of my imagination, sometimes with clouds you put them on and they look good because you're quite close up, and then you go and stand a foot back and you go, oh, that looks pretty horrible. So with these ones I was just seeing it, but I think they're a bit wonky. You don't really see a cloud that dips down diagonally. So what I kind of did here after I took a step back was just sort of merge this into there and just make it into one cloud. So as I say, you can just get a little bit of water and a little bit of the sky colour, and just with a little bit of a damp brush you can just merge clouds together, or you can just soften them up. Just by going over them with the sky colour you can just soften areas of your clouds up, because as I say, they always dry darker, acrylic paints, so you don't want to be too harsh on these clouds, otherwise they'll look a bit too cartoony. And if you have the tone too dark, like if you added too much purple and you had them really, really, really dark, it will bring the clouds towards the viewer. So just by being really, really soft and just going over them, all we're doing is we're just trying to push it back far off into the distance. So now I kind of know where everything's going to go. I'm going to start flowing now. I'm going to start fiddling where I want clouds to go and start speeding it up, because I always say the hardest bit is the very beginning when you don't know where you want things, but once you figure it out, away we go. So we're going to add some orange and pink, we're going to put some purple in it and a little bit of yellow, so we've got a slightly darker tone, so a little bit more purple, and we're going to start building up our clouds. So just like the sky, we want to get cooler in tone and we want to create darker shadows. So what we're going to do now, we're going to do the just like the underpainting with our grass, we're going to put the dark tones on first, and then we're going to put all the highlights and the details on top. Now I think it's a bit too orange, so all I'm going to do is just add a tiny bit more purple just to make it a bit more browner in tone. That's a bit better. And again, look, this cloud, as you can see, that it's just a bit too harsh, but that's fine. We can blend it in with our blender brush in a minute, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. But we just want to lay the shadow tones on first. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating random weird shapes to give the impression of clouds. Now I just always kind of do some flat clouds that are going sideways around the sun, and then I always just do sort of diagonal clouds going off in opposite directions. And I always do little dots like here and there, and they're just sort of like the odd bits and bobs, sort of the dregs of clouds, I guess. And all I do is just try to do weird shapes going towards the corners, and that kind of gives the impression of, because the world's obviously a circle and the sky is like a dome, it just kind of gives the impression that the clouds are going round in the sky. So just a little easy trick. So I do the ones on the horizon, I always do sort of flat, and then the ones going off higher on the painting, I always do kind of diagonally, just so they look like they're going around with the dome of the sky. So all we're doing, we're just adding the shadows on first, but as I say, it's a bit harsh, and we're going to mix some orange, yellow and a dot of black again, just to create some of that sky colour. And all I'm going to do, just make it a little bit darker with a bit of purple, I'm just going to go over what we just painted. And the reason I'm doing that is it will still have, because it's such a dark tone and acrylics are really light in texture, it will just blend the two together. And again, it's just to soften it up, just so the transition doesn't look so harsh. So as I keep saying to you, all these little tricks, they're very slow and they seem quite tedious, but they're little tricks that if you know how to do, they will keep you in good stead, and it will just make your work look so much more photorealistic just in the tones. As I say, there's no detail. These tutorials are still quite easy. Obviously during the week I did that little red sunset for everyone. It was only 20 minutes long. That is very easy. Whereas this one is much more advanced, because I'm trying to do tutorials that there's a range. So some are going to be easy, and some are, like this one, are going to be much more advanced and harder. So we don't leave anyone behind. So you've got some people who are starting painting, and that's fine. And there's plenty of things like how to paint a wave, how to paint the really basic sunsets. And there's other people who want to do this, say, as a profession, or they really just want to improve as an artist, and they are dying to learn the more advanced tutorials. So hopefully the channel now, we've got a nice selection. We've got, I think, 40 plus now landscape tutorials. And as I keep saying to you, if anyone is liking and subscribing, please like the videos, because that helps with the algorithm. But please, if you have any ideas for paintings or you want to learn things, please put them in the comments below. I'd really like to help. So if there's anything you want to learn, just shout. So we're going to add some orange, purple and pink together, but more purple than orange, and a dot of black like usual. And we're just going to get a darker shadow tone for our clouds. So I'm just going to mix it all together, and I'm just going to do the darkest of our clouds. So again, look, just diagonally going towards the corners. And the reason I'm again just trying to use the darkest colour in the corners is, again, it just frames my composition, it just frames my painting. So my sunset will look nice and framed, and when it is framed, if it has a nice border or anything like that, it will look superb. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just blending it into the previous tone, so it's got a nice transition. But because it's a bit darker, and obviously it's cooler in tone, just like the sky, it mirrors the sky, what it does is it tricks the eye, and it just makes it look realistic. So easy trick. So I'm just trying to create shapes and weird patterns. So just off camera, I'm just adding a tiny bit more purple. And I'm just standing up now just so I can get to this corner. A lot of times you can see me getting up. What I do is I always take a step or two back to check my painting, because as I say, when you're very close to it, so look, just adding more purple because we're getting cooler, a dot of black and blue, that really dark colour mixed in with my purple because I'm lifting my palette up to show you guys it's dripping together. All that is Prussian blue. Prussian blue is a posh word for blue and black. Prussian. But yeah, all it is I get up because what I do is I want to make sure everything looks good, and I take a step back because, as I say, a lot of time with your artwork, if you're too close to it, you just can't see if things are working or not. So look, now if we zoom in, we can see the transition are looking really good, and the composition is looking excellent, but the clouds are just a bit too harsh. So by mixing some yellow and orange together and my dot of black like always, and using my blender brush, my favourite brush, we're just going to soften the clouds up. So just going over the top, now that these clouds are a little bit drier, you can just go over the top, and because they're darker in tone and you've got hardly any paint on your brush, you can just sort of glaze them. So imagine you're sort of just colouring in with a crayon. You're just going over the top and you're just glazing what you've already painted, and what that does is it just softens the sky and it just softens your cloud and it just pushes them back and it just makes them look much more realistic. So if you imagine, all we're doing is we're just sort of going over the top with hardly any paint, and we're just sort of colouring in what we've already painted, and it's just to create this light effect and just soften these clouds. And we can do it on these undersides of these clouds, and it just looks like the light, how light works. It just, look, you can still see them underneath, but now they're just lighter in shades because all you've done is just glazed them, and it just looks like the natural light is just shining up on them. So it's a really easy trick. Just makes your clouds look less harsh and less bringing them forward, and so by making them more pastel and just softer, you're pushing them back. So that it looking fab. That's looking so cool. So I'm just getting some yellow and I'm just neating things up. See, I am a perfectionist. I am one of these people, if anything little in my painting is off, I will be in a stinking mood. Like, you don't want to be around me. My wife is testament to this. So, and that never goes away. Everyone asks me, like, when you're obviously better at art or you're doing well for yourself in art, I'm telling you now, that never goes away. And it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because you always want to improve. Now I'm going to mix some white and a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to create a really harsh highlight. Now again, just like our shadow tones, we can soften this up later, but first we want to create the look of a 3D cloud. So all I'm doing is, by using white and yellow and a thin fine liner, I'm just outlining the clouds. So if you just imagine, I'm going round what we just painted. So any cloud, whatever shape it was, I'm just outlining it, and I'm just trying to outline one side of the cloud, or to outline it and then just go around the base of it, and it just implies where these really harsh highlights are, sort of where the sunlight goes around the clouds and just creates this lovely sort of luminous highlight effect when you get on sunsets. So all by just using this really harsh white and yellow. If I zoom in for you so you can see, all I'm doing is trying to create really harsh highlights on our clouds. So as I say, we'll soften it up later, but we just want to put everything on. So think of it like building a home. We're just putting layers upon layers upon layers until when we get to the final piece, we just have this gorgeous house. So if you imagine, all these stages are just like putting a brick in, putting the windows in, doing the carpets, doing the floorboards. We're laying all these things on top of each other, and each step, as I say, it's a bit slow because I'm playing this at normal speed, and I want to show you how I actually do it. I don't want to just fast forward it and you miss things. As I say, some tutorials, they're just sort of like, here's the picture and I've done it in 5 minutes. That's not realistic. So I know a lot of people will probably be fast forwarding sections, and it probably won't help my algorithm and stuff, but I don't care, because as I say, it's all about the painting, it's all about the art. So look, just by creating these nice bright highlights, we're just trying to create a bit of realism. So just think of it as that sun is jet white, so all the highlights around it are going to be extreme. They're going to be really, really bright. So it's all the light literally going round the clouds, giving it a really, really harsh outline, and just really, really like hitting the base of these clouds. Now, because we've got the lovely transition in colour, again, by outlining it, it won't change any of that. It will keep the lovely transition in colour, but just by outlining it, what it does, it just gives it another added realism and gives it a more 3D look, because it just looks like the highlights, the sun is catching the underneath. Because the sun is obviously below these clouds are going above it in the nice sky. It's basically just showing that it's just hitting the base of these clouds, and it's just giving it a more realistic 3D look. But again, we'll soften it up because it just looks a bit harsh, and that's fine. As I say, each stage we're just layering and layering each stage, but we're just trying to get all these highlights down, just trying to sort of have little odd ones, and they can just be clouds that are just getting obliterated with light, and they're just literally super luminous. So look, really, really cool. So now if I zoom out and I get my blender brush and my orange and yellow that we just previously used, we're just going to do the same trick. So now it's dry, I'm just going over the top with my orange and yellow, and again, just like a crayon going over the top, what we're doing is we're just glazing it. So we're glazing what we just did, and we're just making it look less harsh. So look at that, it looks fantastic. So I'm just going to put a little bit, I didn't like that cloud, so I'm just going to put a harsh highlight there. So that looks absolutely excellent, and I'm going to teach you all how to do sunbeams now. So let's do sunbeams. So first you wipe it on your skanky clothes like me. No, you basically get hardly any paint. So I've got a dry canvas, my painting's totally dry, so if it's totally dry and you make a mistake, you can just use a baby wipe. And I've got my blender brush, and I've got hardly any paint. I've got some yellow and white, and again I'm just glazing it, but I'm just creating straight lines that I'm going to create sunbeams. So look, watch. Just get some yellow and white. If I just soften them up, and all you do is just rub it on your clothes or on your piece of kitchen towel. You can't really see this one because of my big arm, but that's all you do. Look, if I do it diagonally, look, see, you've got hardly any paint, and you just glaze over the top of it and you just create this illusion of sunbeams. So just some yellow and white. If I come around to the other side, it might help. Look, just wipe off most of the paint. There we go. Look, and just create a line. And this is all the sort of sunlight beaming out onto those clouds. And again, it just adds another dimension of realism. So look, if I do it diagonally, just coming out, yellow and white, hardly any paint on the brush, just a dry canvas, it just creates that illusion of sunbeams. And now I'm happy with our sky, it's looking excellent. I'm just going to get some bright white, and I'm just going to put back in my sun and just soften it up with my blender brush. I should be sponsored by the Blender Brush Company. I really should. Murray's Blenders. So all I'm doing, I'm just blending it. And again, I'm just getting some bright yellow, and I'm just blending the bright yellow just underneath. Now we've done those gorgeous sun rays, those sunbeams, I'm just blending a lighter tone underneath it just so it matches. Just going out, just again, just to emphasize our sky, but that is looking fantastic. Now I want to do the tree line now, so we're going to mix some purple, some pink, some orange and a little black. So I'm going to load up a fan brush, so more orange just to heat it up, and we're going to create the illusion of a far off forest. So think of a tree line. Now just like before, we want to match everything with the sunlight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the illusion of trees. Now great thing about a fan brush is because it is a fan in shape, you can create really easy trees. So all I'm doing is I'm just splatting it using the texture of the brush, and I'm just trying to create far away trees and bushes. Now you don't want to have them all the same height. You want to leave gaps, and you want to have some trees that are quite tall and some trees that are quite short. So think of that, don't have them all the same height, otherwise it will just look a bit weird. So the secret is leave some gaps and then have some big trees and have some small trees. So some that are medium height like these ones, and then some are a bit taller. And what that does, again, it just makes it look a bit more realistic. You don't see in nature everything being the same, you see everything different. Now because we want to create the illusion of heat by using pure orange and mixing it in while it's wet, all I'm doing is trying to emphasize the sunlight and the heat from the sun on those far away trees. And again, this will trick the viewer's eyes, and it will match our sky and match our composition and match our transition in our clouds, and will match everything we do because we are all about being perfect in our composition. So just by adding real heat, by using bright orange, we're just trying to create the illusion of that sun beaming onto that faraway tree line. So it's really, really easy, and as I say, the fan brush does all the work for you. It's an excellent, excellent tool of the trade. So look, there we go. Just creating the illusion of heat, and because we've got the dark tone on first and then we added the orange on the top, again it just looks again more 3D and just gives it added texture. So really, really easy. So as just like this clouds, we're going to get cooler, so we're going to add purple and black and a little bit of green, just a dot of green, and still some orange because obviously it's getting some heat, so a little bit of green, and we're going to make a cooler tone. So look, all we're doing, we're creating far away trees. Now these trees are getting less sunlight and they are cooler in tone because they are further away from the sun. So all they are is more silhouetted in colour, but we don't want to do them jet black, because if we did them jet black it would bring it towards the viewer. It's still far away into the distance, so it's still getting some heat. So that's why we use a lighter tone. And while it's wet, we're just merging the two tones together. So can you see how that works, and you see how it tricks the eye? Just by creating the illusion of heat underneath the sun, it will just create the illusion of faraway tree line. And now that we've blended the two tones together, when I zoom out, look at that. It looks like the sun is beaming on that tree line, and it tricks the eye just like it does with our faraway grass. Yay, look at that, it's perfect. So we're going to start building up our sunflowers now. So just like the painting itself, we've done 2/3 sky and 1/3 as our grass and sunflowers. Well, we've only got 1/3 now left of the video. We've done the hardest bit. The sky was the hardest bit, and so was the tree line. So we've done all the hard bits. We're now going to do the easy bits, which is the sunflowers. So we're going to take our fan brush and we're going to mix all these colours together to get this nice sunflower colour, which is basically orange. Sorry, because I've zoomed in you haven't seen it. It's orange, yellow, a little bit of green, and some white. So orange, yellow, a little bit of green and some white, and of course my dab of black, my dot of black, sorry. So orange, yellow, little bit of green, and a dab of black. And all we're doing, just like the texture on the trees, we're just using the fan brush just to create sort of gaps in the underpainting. So we're leaving some of the underpainting, and it's just to give the impression of faraway sunflowers. Because it's got some orange in the tone, it's making it look again warm. So try to have a little bit more orange than anything. So orange, green, yellow, and a dot of black. So look, I think because I was using a upright canvas, I thought I was in frame, so I'm very sorry. So orange, yellow, green, and a dot of black. So look, you can see it at the bottom there. It's an orangey yellow colour. So watch. And we've just added more yellow this time. And all I'm doing, I'm just trying to sort of imply the tops of our sunflowers. So because we've used a more orangey tone in the far back towards our tree line, again that's going to trick the viewer's eyes because it just looks like they're warmer and they're more in the sunlight. And as we come towards the viewer, we're going to try to use the same matching light source to make it look more realistic. So look, all I'm doing, if you've ever watched my tutorials with this, the seascapes, where we've done the underpainting, we're leaving gaps in the underpainting to create the illusion of waves. Well, what we're doing, we're leaving gaps in the green, and we're just loading up our brush, and we're just making splats to give all just sort of random shapes to give the impression of the tops of sunflowers. So all I'm doing is I'm just creating random shapes just so it looks like all this far off tops of sunflowers. So look, just splats. But I'm still always leaving gaps so you can still see some of the green. Now, because we've done that lovely transition in the green, because it's warmer in tone around the sun, as we layer on our sunflowers, it will trick the eye just like the sky. So look, all we're doing, we're just trying to create texture. We're trying to create the illusion of far off detail. But again, all it is a trick of the trade. It's just literally using a fan brush. Look, you see the fan shape? And we're just splatting, but leaving gaps to create the illusion of flower heads. So as I say, if you try to mix a little bit more orange than yellow for around the sun. Now what we're going to do, we're going to create the nearest sunflowers that are a bit bigger, and then we can gauge sort of the size. So we're going to mix some orange, some brown, a little bit of black, a little bit of purple, and a dot of green I think we're going to put in it. And we're just going to create the sort of circle middle part of our sunflowers. I will zoom in a minute to show you, because I realise with the darker tone you might not be able to see it that clearly. But all I'm doing is I'm just creating these brown dark circles. So if you imagine a sunflower, you have that really, really big sort of circle in the middle, and then you have all the petals, the bright yellow petals that go around it, and you have this lovely sort of big sort of circle. So all I'm doing, I'm creating large circles towards the viewer. So as I say, the nearest sunflowers towards the bottom of the painting are going to be the nearest towards the viewer, so they're going to be the largest. So what I'm doing is doing quite large circles, and they're going to be my largest sunflowers. And by doing the larger ones first at the bottom, what you can do, now we've got that sort of layer back there of all the sunflowers in the distance, you can do the large ones right at the bottom, and then you can sort of gauge how big you should do the ones in the middle to look like they're fading off. So again, it's just a really, really easy trick by just sort of creating the illusion of distance ones, and then just by doing these bigger sort of big splots these big circles, we can create the illusion of our larger sunflowers. Now, because this area is in the shade, it's darker, I'm just going to add a little bit of black and blue, some Prussian blue, so black, blue to my mix, and I'm just going to make some of these circles, so some of the middle of the sunflower a bit more dark in colour, simply for the fact that they're going to be more in the shade. So again, if you think of what we're trying to do, even though, as I say to you, I'm doing this out of my imagination, because I'm like a master of light, I know how to create the illusion even in the nearest flowers to look more realistic. So we're going to make the petals. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some green to the mix and lots of yellow. So we're going to have green, yellow, little bit of orange to some blue and black and brown, basically. So more yellow and green and orange than anything. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a darker tone for these ones in the shade. So all I'm doing is I'm just going around the circles I've made. Unfortunately, my hand's a bit big, so wait 2 seconds and you will see a sunflower. Because we've done the circles first, there we go. It's easy to go around it and do the petals. So by using a small brush and just by creating random petal shapes. And if you try to do just different sizes of your sunflowers and have some that are going off the edge, so not all just perfect sunflowers, some that are a bit haggard, a bit like me. So look, some going off the edge, we can create the illusion of sunflowers. So by doing the circle, the middle part first, it's really easy to then do the petals. So look, what I'm doing, I'm just creating splats, going around them, just to create the illusion of all the petals. Now, because that colour we're doing is in the shade, it's not as dark. So it's got yellow, green, purple, and a little bit of blue and black, but more yellow than anything. Because it's got the blue and black in it, it keeps it quite dark in tone. And as I keep saying to you, acrylics dry darker, so as it dries, it will give the illusion that these ones are in the shade, because they will dry dark in tone. So all I'm doing, I'm trying not to do them all in a straight line. I'm trying to do them just at random different shapes and sizes and random different placements. So try not to have all your sunflowers. Whoops, I think I've got a bit of white on my brush by accident there. No bother, we'll paint over it in a minute. So what I'm trying to do is do some big, some small, some upright, some to the left, some to the right. I'm not trying to do all of them all lined up. I'm trying to do all different shapes, all different sizes. So really easy technique. So by doing the circle first, look, and just going around, just have plenty of paint on your brush, push down, you can just create the petals. Look, watch, just do lines. There we go. So some are big, some are small. So again, just like the sky, it's quite time consuming. As I said, I could speed this up for you. I could have this going really fast, but you'll miss how to do it. So don't worry if your sunflowers look a bit haggard and look a bit broken, because of the when they're all bunched together and it's windy and things like that, that's how they look. It actually gives it a more realistic feel to make them all different shapes and sizes. And some petals, you know, like all I'm doing, look, I'm pushing down, and some of the petals are going to look broken and some of them are going to look haggard, and that again just makes them look more realistic. So by doing the larger ones right at the bottom of the canvas, now we can sort of make smaller in between ones going backwards towards the sunset. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating smaller circles now. So I'm just getting that dark tone and I'm just going to create the middle of our sunflowers, but obviously a little bit smaller, and again just doing them random places. So I'm just loading up my brush, creating little circles. Some of these, now they're drying, I'm just going to make it a little bit darker just so they stand out. But I can now see, because I've done the ones in the foreground, the ones that are closest to the viewer, I now can gauge how small, medium size I guess, these ones are going to be. And they get smaller as they go backwards. So all I'm doing is smaller circles, because they're going to get smaller as they move away from the viewer. It's a really easy trick. You can do this any flower fields. If you were doing anything, it's easy to do the back first and then skip the middle, do the foreground and engage the size, and then just see what you want to do and put in the middle. So look, here we go. We're going to start putting them in now. And now we know how to do it. We can do it a lot quicker. We can just quickly fill them all in. So all I'm doing is creating smaller ones, all different shapes. Some are going to be bunched together. Some are going to be whacking each other, because obviously you get the wind and the breeze. But now we know how to do it. Just using that darker of the tone. And as you can see now that the ones we've done have dried, because obviously we're painting along, acrylics are drying. Can you see how dark they've dried? There's one in the middle that where I had a bit of white by accident on my brush. That one looks a lot brighter, doesn't it? But you can see just how dark they've dried. But because we added that blue and the black to that yellow and a little bit of green, what it does when it dries, as I say, it just keeps with our composition and it looks like it's in the shade. So it does the trick for us. So that's why I keep saying to you, all these tones, just becoming a master of the light and the master of the tones. And if anyone's got things like a colour wheel at home, that's a really good little tool just to learn. So what we want to do is we want to get more orange and more brighter towards the sun. So now we've done ones in the shade, we're going to add some yellow and some orange to the mix, and we're going to do real bright ones. So these sunflowers are the epitome of a sunflower. They're in the sun. They are getting the sun and they are getting a warmer tone. So by using orange and yellow and adding that to our mix, what we're doing, again, these are the sunflowers that are in the light and not in the shade, so they are going to seem brighter. Now, as I say, they are going to dry darker, but this tone, this orangey yellow tone, again should trick the eye, just like the background forest is tricking your eye, and it will make it look more realistic. So I hope these tutorials are teaching you the basics. Being an artist at trade, I've never taught painting before. I've never ever been to a painting class or anything, so I wouldn't know how well I'm doing in teaching. So I hope I'm explaining this all right for everyone. I hope I'm explaining it in an easy way for people to follow along at home. But what I'm trying to teach you through the tutorials is the same techniques over and over and over and over again, and as we get harder, but if you're able to master how colours and tones and light works, you can apply it to anything. So even if you don't like seascapes but you really liked animals, you could do the same trick. So even if you painted an elephant, you could do one side orange and one side cooler tones, and it will look really realistic, simply for the fact that you're using the same techniques and you're using the same colours, and you're learning how light works and how the warmer tones are more orange and yellow, red and white, and the cooler tones are more purple and blue. So look, it's already tricking your eye, it's already starting to work. And now we're putting these gorgeous sunflowers in, and we know they're a little bit smaller than the ones in the foreground. They are looking all cool and it's starting to look so realistic. This is not bad from my imagination. I'm quite impressed. So as I say, it's just learning how tones work. So look, some of the ones that are dry I'm just highlighting, I'm just going over the top with that nice warmer tone. So just doing all these petals. And as you can see, look, as it starts to dry, it always dries a little bit darker. So if you have to go over the top of some of them, just to give some of them a highlight, there's nothing wrong with that. You can just literally just go over the top when they're dry and just use the same tone just to emphasize highlight, just to make it look brighter. So if you ever want to cool areas down, just add some blue and purple to your colors. And if you ever want to heat things up, just add some orange and yellow or even some red to your colors, and you can just heat areas up, or you can put things in the shade in the cool. So look, it's looking fab. There's nothing better than losing yourself in a painting. The great thing about painting, it's like any craft where you lose all sense of time and you lose your sense of yourself and you're just lost in your creation. So say you're writing, or you're riding a bike, or you're running, or you're cooking, whatever it is, whatever you really enjoy, if you can get to that place where you are just lost in your creation and you're just having fun, it relaxes you unbelievably. It's really therapeutic. It's very good. It's a real nice place to be. So I hope these tutorials are, in today's crazy times with everything going on, I hope they are giving you a bit of stress relief, a bit of quiet time, a bit of nice relaxation. So look at that, it's already starting to work. So we're just going to try to bridge the tone. I'm just going to make this area a little bit in between. So I'm going to add some green, yellow and orange, a little bit of blue, mixing it up to make it cooler, and purple. So again, it's just to make it cooler. And just still got a bit of orange, but it's slightly cooler than the previous tone. And again, just like the sky, do you remember when we did the bridge tone? It's just so there's not a really harsh jump between the sunflowers that are really in the sunlight and the ones that are in the left hand corner that are really in the shade. So now it's starting to look really cool. I'm just trying to bridge the gaps. Now you could, if you really want to, I'm not going to do this today, but you could, if you wanted to, go between your sunflowers and create lots of things like leaves and grass and texture, but I think that would be just a bit too much today. I think you're all doing very well, follow along so far, so I don't want to make it too complicated. But look, all I'm doing, just highlighting some of them where the petals were just completely manky, I'm just going over the top, and I'm just making some just look a bit more prominent, a bit more standing out. And if you have to go back, like I will in a minute, and just punch holes in them and just put the circle back in the middle, that's fine as well. So don't worry yourself if you paint over it while you're doing the petals. Now if my hand gets out of the way, it should look like it's getting cooler towards the left hand corner. Now remember, we're going to sign it in the left hand corner as well, so we want to have a cool dark tone so our signature gets a nice frame again, so it stands out. So you want to get recognition for your work, you want to have your signature nice and bold in the left hand corner, and again, by having a darker tone, it will trick the eye and it will get your signature to stand out. So all I'm doing, just while it's dry, I'm just going over some of the sunflowers just to make them look a little bit more prettier. Some look a bit manky. So now they're dry, I'm just emphasizing some. It's looking cool. Now while I'm watching this and I'm putting the sound over the top, it's looking better than I imagined. It's looking really, really, really good. So just highlighting areas. Now what you can do, as I said, you can draw some of the stems. Now because I've got a very thin brush, I'm just using that dark tone that we use for the shadow petals. I'm just drawing some odd lines and some odd not petals, like the leaves, because they have odd leaves that stick out on the sunflowers. So look, I'm just going straight down or just wonky. I'm just creating some odd lines again just to give it that sense of realism. Sunflowers are very tall, aren't they? They can be up to about 6 foot tall or more. So look, I'm just drawing some odd leaves. I'm just drawing some straight lines going up. So it creates the illusion of texture. Now, as I said, you could do loads of that, but we're going to skip that. Now, just to finish her off, I'm just going to get some orange and yellow. And I'm just going to emphasize the highlights of the light on the sunflowers. So because it's coming from that right hand side and the sun is above it, I just want to emphasize these sunflowers just so those sunflowers look like they are getting the most highlight from that sunlight. And just like we did the beams in the sky, it's just to create the illusion of heat. So if you think of a really good picture, a really good composition, everything matches. So our sky is matching, our tree line is matching, and so are the highlights and the shadows on our sunflowers. So our sunsets and our sunflowers should all match in tone. So again, you'll learn this just through experience, you'll learn this as you go along. But if you watch some of the best artists here on YouTube and on things like Instagram and all these wonderful social media platforms like Facebook and things, you will see they do all the same tricks, that whatever tone they're matching, say they were doing a mountain or a landscape or anything like that, they always have the same tones in the sky as they do on the subject matter, be it an animal or a lake or wherever it's going to be. It's always going to match. So if you can learn how to do that by matching tones, your work will look so much more realistic, just simply for trying to match the light effect. So there we go, just by using that orange. So there we go, just by trying to envision where that light would be going, and just sort of, as I say, if you ever make a mistake like I do, just rub it out with your fingers. The great thing about acrylics, they dry so quick. So look at that now. So all I'm going to do, just to finish up, I'm just going to get some black and blue, and I'm just going to poke holes and do the circle of the middle of our sunflowers. So they have those gorgeous big circles in the middle. So all I'm doing is just emphasizing it. But can you see now how the light and the color, the tones are the things that are tricking your eye? If you think this painting, we're doing this in just over an hour, and it's a really, really good quality painting, and at the same time it's not particularly detailed. There's not much detail. It's the tones and the color scheme that is tricking your eyes to give it the realism. So as I keep saying to you in all the tutorials, if you nail this and then you get better at thinking of ideas, thinking of things that work, practicing your sketching, practicing your drawing, but if you nail the fundamentals at the beginning and get that realism down, your work will just take off like a rocket, and you can see massive results really, really quickly, because you're just applying all the basic fundamentals of things like light and texture and tone, and you can create these fabulous pieces of works in literally an hour. If you think of this, you've taken an hour to do this. You can sell it for lots of money. Yay! So look, we've signed her in the left hand corner. She's looking fantastic. You've learned how to do a light effect. You've learned how to do wonderful clouds, highlights. You've learned how to get cooler as you get towards the corners. You've learned how to do sunbeams. You know how to do that now. You've learned how to do light effects on a forest or a faraway woodland. You've learned how to create depths and distance and bring things closer towards you, and obviously get cooler in tone, just so you can create the realism detail. So thank you all so much for watching this tutorial. I know it's a long one, I know it's more advanced, but I'm sure everyone has done a fantastic job. So please like and subscribe if you haven't done already. And I'm Murray, and thank you so much guys for watching. I hope you all take care of yourselves and see you soon. Take care. Bye.